Okay. And it's, if I have to have a lockdown conversation with anybody, I can't think of a better person to have it on but Greg Braden.
Mm.
And here we are. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're on live on my Facebook page, on Greg Braden's Facebook page, and on a webinar where we're going to be answering questions from people. But first, I don't think I really have to introduce him, but I will anyway. I mean, Greg Braden, what do you say about him? He's a 5 times New York Times best-selling author. He's spoken around the world. He is a 2020 Templeton Award nominee, which is given to people who are nominated who have amazing contributions in the fields of human potential, extended human potential. He's a scientist, he's a visionary, and he is also my dear, dear friend. So welcome, Greg. I can't think of, besides my husband, Brian, you are one of the great guys on the planet. So thanks for
Um,
being here.
Lynn, thank you so much. I know your husband, Brian, and I know I'm in good company when you say that. We are on officially now. We were live unofficially a few moments ago. So I'm going to begin again. I would just want to say hello, welcome to everyone. Happy 2021. Lynn, as I mentioned, I am coming from this is a studio set where we're recording ancient civilization episodes. So I'm in the studio today, just outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I'm really excited about this conversation. I only slept about 4 hours last night. I was so excited in my mind, going through all of the good news that we can share with our audience today about where we are in the world right now, and what we can expect in the months and the years ahead. So thank you for inviting me to share this time with you. And I'm going to follow your lead, Lynn. Wherever you'd like to go with this, I'm happy to follow.
Okay, well, one of the extraordinary things about 2020 is that at the very end of the year, we had what was called the Great Conjunction, which
Mm.
was this extraordinary planetary event where there was a conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn. Now, this doesn't occur except for, many hundreds of years. I think the last time it happened was 1226. And I'm sure you all heard about it because we were told it was a bright star in the sky. It showed up as a bright star in the sky. They even thought the Star of Bethlehem might have been one of these conjunctions. But there was an extraordinary conversation going on among astrologers. I know I looked at Shawnee Nicholson, who's a New York Times bestselling astrologer, who was talking about this being an extraordinary time of disruption, but also renewal, a breaking down of so many old things and the birth of many, many new things. And I was thinking about something else, Greg. I was thinking about lockdown. I was thinking about how we're all kind of, you know, stuck indoors here. We can't do what we were normally allowed to do. And I started thinking about it, what is going on in our brains when something like that happens, vis-a-vis everything we need to look at and change and the disruption going on. And I started thinking about blind people. Now,
Mm.
there have been some really interesting studies showing that people who are born blind, the brain is so clever and neuroplasticity so huge that other senses become much more heightened. And I started thinking about that with what's going on right now. What's I think happening is because of the situation with COVID, because of the knock-on effects with our social distancing, with our isolation, with the economic realities, et cetera, our brains are forced to come through with a new reality. And we're forced to re-examine what's really important. And I think what's been so extraordinary for all of us is we've really got viscerally, this is the end of the getting, spending, accumulating, every man for himself mentality that has characterized us for several hundred years.
Mm.
And because of that, our brains, I feel, are going to be rewired for something much more meaningful, because we've had to see that what we miss most of all is connection. What we need most of all is community. You know, people have loads of money because they can't spend it. Those of who are lucky enough to still have their jobs or have retirement income, but they can't spend it anymore. It's like being on a foreign planet and not being able to negotiate in the way that we did negotiate before. So we are forced to look at new things. But I know you also have great feelings about what's going on now and what rewiring we're experiencing.
You just covered a lot of ground, Lynn, and I didn't know you were going to talk about the conjunction. So I just wanted to comment on that first. We live in the high desert of northern New Mexico, where we typically have clear skies, and the conjunction, the evening of the conjunction, was no exception. And what I discovered was a lot of people in the U.S. and throughout the world were not able to actually see, they knew it was happening, but they couldn't see it with their eyes, either because of overcast skies or because the conjunction dropped below the horizon so quickly. It was only available for about an hour after sunset. So I was able to photograph this conjunction, and I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but I'll ask our social media people to post that photograph, so our group can see this. But you could actually see the Saturn in front of Jupiter. You could see the two planets very, very clearly in the photograph. And it was about, you're right, it was about 800 years ago was the last time we had that kind of a conjunction. So something very, very unique, something very extraordinary was certainly afoot cosmologically. What my work has revolved around, this is the 41st year now that I've done this work in one form or another. It's kind of a mind blower. I don't know where those 41 years went. But what my work has been focused on is the fact that we are living an extraordinary time in human history, in the history of civilization itself. And it's not just our imagination, that there are actually parameters of rhythms and cycles that are converging right now, in addition to the conjunction. There are rhythms and cycles that are converging in a way that we've never seen in our lifetimes. We've never seen in 5,000 years of recorded human history, cycles and rhythms of nature. Climate is one of those. We all know about that. And if you watched only mainstream news, you would think that's the only one that's happening. But there are other rhythms and cycles that are converging with climate. There are cycles of human innovation that are rhythms that are recognized by scientists like Schumpeter and like Kondratiev. If any of our viewers have ever studied economics, they know about the K wave and Kondratiev cycles. And we are actually at the end of one of these innovation cycles. The information technology age is coming to a close, and that means that we're birthing something new. And I can't help but believe that that newness is based in quantum technologies, quantum communications, quantum computers. We're also living a cycle of human conflict that happened to have peaked last year in the year 2020. And this conflict is directly correlated to the strength of the magnetic fields of our planet and the sun. Scientists know this. It's a very well-known correlation. When the magnetic fields are weak, we tend to be more aggressive, less willing to cooperate to solve our problems. And we have just passed the weakest point in this cycle. So any one of these, Lynn, would be a big deal. and has the potential to change the way we think and we live in and of themselves. The fact that all of them are converging in the way that they are right now, when we look at the big picture, you and I are systems thinkers on one level. We tend to look at the big pictures, and then we go into that big picture and look at the moment of our lives and what that big picture means to the moment of our lives. I'm not surprised to see that the systems that we have come to trust and rely upon in the familiar ways of life and living are in turmoil. They're in upheaval right now. Everything's turned upside down. If I didn't know all the things about my daily life, if I looked only at those cycles, I would suspect that the people of the world living during those cycles would go through a lot of change. So, so we are living a time of extremes, and it makes sense that we can expect big changes in the world, and that means big changes in our lives. But I want to be really clear, it doesn't mean bad changes or even good changes for that matter. It means big shifts are happening, and we're learning about what works and what doesn't. Because the only things that are breaking down right now, if we look closely, the only things breaking down are the unsustainable ways of thinking and living. And I think that is really important to bear in mind as we look at the world uh, honestly and objectively, not through the eyes of mainstream media, because mainstream media has an agenda. They're focused only on the moment. They're not looking at the big picture, and you won't hear this in the mainstream. So Len, I'm gonna springboard off of this one more thing, and then we can take it from there. Because in the midst of the crises and the turmoil in our time of extremes, what I want our community, our global family, what I want my global family to know is there's a lot of good news right now. And probably the best possible news that we could hope for is the fact that we already have all of the solutions to all the big problems that face us today. They already exist. The technology is known, the relationships have already been discovered. We already have the solutions. We've got all the food we need to feed every mouth of every child, woman, and man on the face of the earth. We have the technology to create clean, green, sustainable energy with zero greenhouse gases that cannot be weaponized, that is inexpensive. We've had it for 70 years. We already know how to create economies based upon sharing and cooperation rather than scarcity and competition. Every organ in the human body is now documented with the ability to heal itself if it's given the right conditions. We already have all of this right now. And the question is, if we have it, where is it? Why aren't we seeing it right now? And I think that's what this year is all about. All that stands between us and the good news that I've just shared coming into our lives is the thinking that has yet to make it a priority in our lives, that the values of life itself and freedom and community and imagination, those values have yet to become the priority in our lives. And this is what you're talking about, connection. And I think what we are living this year and beyond is the settling out of the extremes for 2020. And we're going to find that those values are our most cherished values in our lives. And they're going to go from the back burner to front and center. They become the foundation for the policies that we embrace, for the laws that we enact, for the way that we choose to live our lives. And I think we couldn't hope for anything better in the new year, because now we know what works and what doesn't. So I just covered a lot of ground, but I wanted to lay that out so we can tie into those things.
No, that's so great, Greg. And that's exactly it. The tearing down of what not only doesn't work, but isn't true. I mean, one of the things that's so fascinating to me is to see how current evolutionary biologists have reduced the miracle of human biology to a transaction.
Mm.
I mean, for instance, Richard Dawkins says that essentially the genes we have, our genetic blueprint, is essentially selfish for its own survival. And that in turn, he has written, gives rise to human selfishness. You also have people, other evolutionary biologists, putting it a lot more unsentimentally, saying things like, scratch an altruist and watch a hypocrite bleed. And you and I, Greg, know that that is completely not true. When you look at the new science, you see that people need, not only want to give, they need to give. It's built into our biology. When you look at studies of toddlers, for instance, and they've done scientific studies of toddlers, and they've had a researcher try to reach a stick that he can't get to. And they've had different kinds of studies where in one case, the toddlers get a reward for giving him the stick. In other times, he's just reaching and there's no reward. And they find that the kids are handing that stick over automatically, whether they get a reward or not. They don't have anything to gain but giving. And we see that over and over again with the science of altruism. I mean, altruism is a bulletproof vest. People who do things for other people are healthier, happier, and live longer lives. But not only that, Greg, we need to give. We need to be part of something bigger. We need to belong. People who commit suicide mostly do so, according to psychologists, because they feel excessively individuated. In other words, they feel left out. And feeling left out is the one thing we cannot bear, which is why isolation right now is so difficult and why our need for community and connection is coming to the fore more than anything else. Yeah. So we have built inside of us a biology, as Greg said, that's very different from the scientific story we've been given. That is very bleak. That requires that we think we require things from the outside in order to heal. As you say, Greg, there is no vaccine. There is no drug on the planet that can even in a tiny way approximate the extraordinary complexity and genius of the human immune system. Yeah, yeah. So I'm not arguing for or against any political position with COVID, but what I'm arguing for is your own extraordinary genius and our biology, a new story that's coming to the fore that is actually the story of all of the things that we need now. All of the things we need more than anything else. We have in there that capacity to give, that need to give. We have that capacity and desire more than anything else to be part of connection and part of community. And it is those kinds of things, tapping into what our real scientific story tells us about, that is going to get us through this really difficult time.
Yeah, Lynn, I couldn't agree more. And again, you covered a lot of ground. The scientists, the biologists that you were talking about and others, we all know who they are. They are stuck in a story of the false assumptions of obsolete science. They have not stayed current with the new discoveries, or if they have, they are in denial of what the discoveries are telling us. This, as a scientist, is so interesting to me. We ask science to tell us who we are, and science is doing a really good job of telling us who we are. And now there are scientists that are pushing back and they're saying, "Oh, we don't like that story." So they're having a hard time embracing what the best science of the 20th and now the 21st century is telling us. Now, I am a degreed geologist, so I have seen evolution in the fossil record in my coursework, in my studies. Evolution is a fact, and I want to be very clear. I'm not a denier when it comes to evolution. I've seen it for plants, animals, insects in the fossil record, but I'm also a realist and I'm honest about the science. what the new discoveries are telling us, when we take the DNA from the fossilized remains of the beings that we used to think are our ancestors, and we compare that DNA to our DNA today, what we see is that we did not descend from the primitive forms of life that we've been led to believe in the way that evolution suggests. The DNA shows that we appeared on Earth mysteriously. We don't know precisely how we got here, but we do know, and scientists agree on the date, it was about 200,000 years ago. And the DNA tells us that we showed up with all of the extraordinary potentials that we have today already intact. They didn't develop slowly, gradually over a long period of time. They were there 200,000 years ago, and we haven't changed. And that is not Darwin's idea of evolution. When we begin looking at the bigger picture, the new discoveries in the cosmos, Lynn, this is so exciting to me, because when I was in school back in 1950s, 1960s, early 1970s, and I was taught that we live in a dead universe of inert material, dust and gas, and that life itself, our origins, is the product of these random mutations and what's called lucky biology. So if we actually lived in a dead universe, and if we actually were the product of lucky biology, the way that we've chosen to live in the past would make perfect sense, because it's all about, getting all that we can get. But the new discoveries are now telling us the universe isn't dead. It is alive, it's conscious, it's intelligent. And if we are in fact living in a universe that is alive and conscious and intelligent, it makes perfect sense that our origins would reflect that. And this is what the science is telling us, is that there's something extraordinary about us, about being human. And one of the things I find so fascinating, and you just touched on this, is that all of the technology that we're building in the world around us, as complex and sophisticated as it is, it mimics the functions that we already perform within us, except we do it better. And that goes for the immune response. Vaccines mimic what our bodies already do. Computers mimic what we already do in terms of storing memory and communicating information. And we are the only form of life, Lynn, that is known to have the ability to self-regulate all of what is now called soft technology or inner technology. It's not computer chips and wires and chemicals, it's cell membranes and neurons in blood. And we have this extraordinary potential, and we self-regulate through the traditions that we have cherished the most over time, things like breath and focus and thoughts and feelings and emotions and beliefs. And as we begin to embrace what these discoveries are telling us, that we live in a universe of cooperation, and that our bodies are based in cooperation, our cells are based in cooperation, it makes sense that that would be reflected in the way that we live our everyday lives, that our laws and our policies would reflect those principles as well, so that we can align ourselves with these natural rhythms and natural processes. So this is where the good news comes in. We already have the solutions. All that is lagging is the thinking that makes room in our lives for the solutions that already exist. And as we begin in this time of what many people are calling a reset, as we check our personal values and what's important to us, as you mentioned, what we begin to understand is that the things that used to be philosophical concepts, or maybe academic, topics of conversation over a latte, used to be on the back burner, about health and vitality and wellness and exercise and nutrition, resilience and spirituality. Those things now have come front and center, because our very lives depend upon us giving those things a priority in the new world. And that's, to me, I can't think of anything more exciting.
You know, Greg, thank you for covering all of that too, and that empowering message. And I want to just amplify one other aspect of our human brilliance, which is we have capacities that we knew about as children that have been denied by modern science, by modern living. And what I'm talking about is our extraordinary extended human potential. We have, and many, many studies have demonstrated this, the ability to see beyond our senses. Remote viewing is a tried and tested human capacity with novices. It's been shown at Princeton University and many other universities. We have the ability to forecast events. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake did an amazing study of whether or not people dreamed about 9/11. And he found hundreds and hundreds of people from a little random selection had dreamed with great specificity about planes going into two towers. We have the ability to forecast. We have the ability to transmit information to each other beyond the usual means of human communication, just with our minds. We have the ability essentially to go back in time. I've seen that with, and I teach it in retro intention techniques. We have the ability, most of all, to heal ourselves, aspects of our lives, each other, and in fact, the world. I've done 35 intention experiments now, and 31 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects. Everything from trying to make seeds grow faster, to healing somebody of post-traumatic stress, to lowering violence in war-torn areas. Studies with scientists in prestigious universities around the world. And I've also seen with my own eyes and in groups, in Power of 8 groups, in large, large groups, people who have been healed in an instant by the remarkable capacity of a small group and small group healing to work. This is more remarkable than the most remarkable surgery. And so the point is we have that within us. And so I wanted to also move on the conversation, Greg, to something you've really talked about, which is resilience and what sort of things we need. And one of the things I wanted to touch upon to begin with is hope. I mean, one of the most dangerous things we can do at the moment is to watch the nightly news because it is filled with despair. And I want to tell you about why hope is so important. Hope is essentially the world's best medicine. There was a British guy who was in his 50s who, unbeknownst to him, had a mild form of leukemia. But the doctors never shared this with him. And he went to his local hospital in Gwent in Wales for his usual checkup and blood work. And he had been doing brilliantly. And his blood work showed he was doing brilliantly too. Now, when he was due for his next appointment, he didn't show up. And he only came some days later in a terribly disheveled state. And they discovered that he had read his notes in the last meeting and found out he had leukemia. And after that, he went rapidly downhill, and 3 weeks later, he was dead. There was no change in his blood work. There was nothing wrong with him. He should have lived, but that diagnosis, what Larry Dossey calls a hex diagnosis, is the thing that killed him. Now, I tell you that, and I also want to tell you about, you probably know about the woman Kelly Turner, who did her book. She's a psychologist, I think, and she is an integrative oncologist. And she has studied people who have spontaneous healings from cancer. And she has looked at 9 key elements as to why people reverse cancer. And she has found that only 2 of them have to do with the physical. Only 2, which is changing your diet and taking supplements or herbs. All the rest have to do with emotional, mental, spiritual change. And they are things like taking control of your health, or following intuition, or developing a spiritual practice, or connection with your community, or embracing some sort of social support, or reacquainting yourself with a strong reason for why you want to continue to live. These are all mental, emotional, spiritual pieces of medicine, and they turn out to be the most important medicine. And I tell you one final story about that, which was the story of my mother-in-law. When she was 79, she developed breast cancer. And being a quiet, little, abashed British woman, she didn't tell anybody about this, and she just nursed it privately, to the point where her breast was essentially like raw meat, and was only discovered by her general practitioner when she bumped into one of us and screamed in pain. So we marched her down to her GP, and he told us to get her affairs in order. She had a few months to live. And she started going rapidly downhill, and it was too late to do anything conventional. So we brought her to an alternative, a doctor who was integrative and had healed thousands of patients. And he took one look at little Edie, and I was in the room when he examined her for a bit of moral support. And he looked at this ravaged breast, which was like raw meat, and he said, oh, we can handle that. And I knew at that point she was going to live, and she did for many more years. He changed her diet and gave her some supplements. But the main thing she had was her family rallying around her and Dr. Patrick Kingsley's statement of hope. That's why hope is so powerful in this time of change and necessary. And you must guard it. You must guard your own sense of hope like a very important and rare diamond. So I know that's one thing you've touched on, Greg. What else do you think is really important in terms of developing resilience for health and also getting through this time?
Wow, Lynn, it's interesting. I don't know if you know this. I feel so passionately about hope that I just developed an entire course based upon everything we're talking about, because what I found is that resilience means different things to different people. Again, I was raised in the Midwest of this big, beautiful country of ours, of America. And when I was a kid, what resilience meant was suck it up and get over it. That was resilience. If your dog died, or if your friend, died, or your girlfriend broke up with you, just get over it. And resilience was considered to be the ability to bounce back from a disappointment or from a loss. That is changed. The Stockholm Resilience Institute has done so much research, and they now tell us of a different kind of resilience. It's called adaptive resilience. Adaptive resilience means that we honestly and objectively take into account the factors of the world that we live in, the situation that we live in, and that we, rather than deny the changes around us, that we're constantly upgrading and changing the way that we think and we live. And that resilience actually covers 5 different domains that you've already mentioned. We have biological resilience, and we all know about that. And that's, exercise, supplements, nutrition, sleep, stress, all of that comes into the biological resilience. But we have spiritual resilience, we have mental resilience, we have psychological resilience, all that come into play with these things. So when we talk about hope, again, when I was a kid, and this, I didn't know we were going to talk about this in this way. So I don't have anything prepared, but the idea of hope when I was a kid, and up until the 1980s, it was kind of like a wish. It's like, I hope that I get this job, or I hope this relationship works out. I hope this new marriage works better than the last four. So hope was just something that we would kind of wish for or cling to. But now, Lynn, and you mentioned hope, there is an entire new science based upon what is called hope theory. And the hope theory, you can actually get degrees, psychological degrees, in the new sciences called hope theory. Hope theory involves two different parameters of hope. We have to have the vision, but we also need to have the strategy to achieve the vision. And this is a very, very different way of looking at hope. When I was putting the course together and when I was studying the ideas of hope theory, some of the most potent examples that I found were people who have had their freedoms taken from them and learned to not only just survive, but to actually thrive in the new environment, such as hostage situations. And I read the studies of, for example, in the 1980s, the longest recorded hostage situation was the bureau chief of the Associated Press in Beirut. As a journalist, you probably remember this. When this happened, was taken hostage for political reasons. He was held for over 2,000 days. And when he was released, the first thing the reporters asked him, they said, you look pretty good. How did you do that? And what he said was a beautiful illustration of the power of hope. He had the belief that his life would be spared for political reasons, but then he had a strategy to get through every day, and he structured every day and gave meaning to each moment of each hour of every day, and he held to that. And this brings to light another aspect of resilience, is the fact that we must find meaning in our lives. There were studies that were done. I'm fascinated by longevity, not just because of the fact of chronological years, living more chronological years, but when people live to 120 or 132 years of age, which are very well documented, the only way that can happen is for a consistent healing in the body to occur, and a regeneration and a rejuvenation in ways that we're typically not led to believe is possible. And when the studies were done, they were looking for what is the common thread among people of longevity: Tibetan monks and nuns and yogis and mystics, and people living in the Caucasus, and people living in the high Andes of southern Peru. And, of course, environmental factors are important, but the common thread, Lynn, was that they all found deep meaning in their lives. When they would wake up in the morning, they felt needed. So, for example, the nuns in Tibet, and I met, I actually walked with a nun who was 122 years old at the time, into our afternoon meditations, our afternoon prayers, chanting sessions. And I never would have known she was 120 or 122 because she didn't look the way I'd been programmed to think someone of that age would look. But when I talked to her through the translator, she felt needed. She said, my sisters need me. I work in the garden. I prepare the meals. I help children with their schoolwork. She said, I make the lunches for the people so that they can go about their day and focus on their spirituality. She said, what would they do without me? That is a powerful, powerful motivator, because I'm going to go back to the science. The science tells us that every thought, feeling, and emotion that we create has a chemical equivalent in our bodies. They're called neuropeptides. And those chemicals are the carriers of the signals to the glands and the organs that tell our bodies how to perform and what to do. When we have that sense of meaning in our lives, we're giving our bodies, we're giving our cells the reason to perpetuate, to continue in healthy and vital ways of expressing. And it shows up in the telomeres, it shows up in the stem cells, it shows up in the immune response. So hope is important. And it's important to have the vision of what's possible, as well as the strategy. That's also important to find meaning. And it's something we all have to do for ourselves. We each must find in our journey of life. We've got to find significance to the life that we live and the meaning to who we are and what we bring to this world. And those that don't are the ones typically that succumb to to the diseases, to the viruses, to the what we call old age. They look older than their years, and they typically feel older than their years. Len, that's interesting. You and I have a lot of colleagues who have also become dear friends, brothers and sisters. And when we get together for our conferences publicly, and then privately, we go and we have our lunch or our dinners together, and we share about our lives and our dreams and our goals and our families and our passions. I don't know about you, but I would imagine, like me, more than once you've looked around the table and you've thought, first of all, I am so blessed to be in the presence of these amazing people. But number two, you look at those people and none of them look their age. None of them look the way that society tells us people of those ages should look. And you ask yourself, what is the common denominator? And for me, what I see is that most of those people have devoted their lives and rearranged their families, their careers, their daily routines to support a passion and a vision that gives them meaning every moment of every day in their lives. And I think there's a lot more to that than we've been led to believe. So I'll stop there, but resilience covers those things and more.
Thank you, Greg. You said so many wise things in all of that. By the way, Greg and I are about 110, each of us. And so we really don't look our ages. I love that story of the woman who's 120, and I'll have some of what she's having. But what you said is so important and was so central. And that is, first of all, adaptation, the ability to adapt. I have a wonderful scientific study that illustrates what is central to adaptation. That was that wonderful Harvard study, started in the 1930s. It was called the Grant Study. And what they did was they took 200 plus of the best and brightest of Harvard students. This included John F. Kennedy, by the way. And they measured them and they talked to them, and they were the brightest. They were most physically, they were beautiful physical specimens, and they were also the most well-adjusted. And they wanted to follow them over time. And they figured they were going to have, 268 success stories. It wasn't like that at all. With the exception of a few people, there was the president, there were a few other exceptions. Most of them had terrible biographies. As they followed them, they found there was a guy called George Valiant, I think, who followed them meticulously, a psychiatrist. And he said, I don't know what happened. I mean, the guy that they had put their money on as being the most successful actually lived a very, just unsuccessful life, smoked a lot of dope, had a psychotic girlfriend, dined out on a lot of stories in his past, and died young. They found, however, that there was one real key to adaptation, and that was what Valiant discovered, was the ability to adapt to changing circumstances being the one key factor, more than intelligence, more than, good luck, more than lots of money. The ability to adapt was most important. And one of the most successful was a guy who had been struggling with depression. And after receiving help from one particular nurse in a hospital, he was so inspired, went back to school, became a psychiatrist, and spent his life helping other patients. And that altruism, that sense of purpose, was the thing that really became successful in him and changed his life and gave him a path. So I want to talk to you about giving, because what Greg and I are actually talking about is a new stock market of values. We have the old stock market, which is all about, profit being the most important element to human success. And we're really talking about a completely new set of values that are going to get us through this crisis. And for me, one of the most important elements of all is sharing. This is not just a feel-good thing. Sharing isn't just, a thing that we do when we've got a little bit of time or a little extra money. We do a little bit of charitable giving. The science shows that we need to give. We need to give as much as we need to breathe. That is part of, I know there was a Russian scientist, Russia didn't believe in Darwinism. Russia believed in an idea called mutual aid, and that came out of other countries, an alternate Darwinian theory saying that animals really need to cooperate. And we're now finding that that is really true of humans. We need to give. We need to, and we see this with all of the biological things that happen when we give in any capacity. Pleasure areas of the body light up. And I've seen it in my Power of 8 groups. I run a year-long master class. One is about to kick off February 6th. And I teach people about the power of intention and extended human potential and how to use it in their lives. And then I put people in groups of 8 or so and have them work with each other for an entire year. Now, what we've found is intention works really well for the various parts of the group. Group intention supersizes it. It's part of our extended human potential. But what works even more is when you're doing intention for someone else. Extraordinary things happen. As I say, I document what's going on with the people in our groups every year. And I have found when people are stuck, when something is not working in their lives, when they give, essentially something opens up in their lives. I've seen people like Andy Spiros get a new job when she's done intention for someone else. In this year's class, we had the most amazing situation. We had a woman who had lost her hearing because she had had to have radiotherapy for cancer. And the group, she got involved in sending intention to other people. And then when it was her turn and she got intention, she got her hearing back. It was just extraordinary. And they all focused on a picture of a perfect working ear. And that, I think, had something, that helped. But I've seen what happens also in, as Greg says, studies of longevity have shown over and over and over again, if you're sick with something and you help someone else with the same illness, you're more likely to be healed. If you are, if you lose your job and you are, you have a very little income, you're less likely to be depressed if you have 2 things: a strong spiritual belief and even more important, a strong spiritual community. So what we're really talking about is community, is connection, is sharing. The new stock market of values is going to be very much about interdependence looking at, what our real capacities are, making use of them far more than we have had before, acknowledging them, our ability to do these things, that we don't need the technology. I mean, Greg and I shared a course together called Technology, Consciousness, and Evolution. And we were basically talking about, well, hey, we're at a point of unprecedented discoveries in our lives about technology, but they don't approximate what the human spirit and the human being can accomplish with the tools we already have. So these are just some of the new, the old tools that we're going to have to draw upon in this time of change, that I see us really improving on the life that we had, because we're going to really acknowledge the true science and the way we really are.
Yeah, Lynn, I just want to jump onto that. You said so many very cool things, as you always do. I love it when you talk that way. One of the most foundational discoveries that the best science of the modern world has made and published in peer-reviewed journals, something we hear about very seldom, is a fundamental reversal of what Darwin said about our relationship to nature. Darwin believed that nature, the fundamental rule of nature, is competition and what he called survival of the strongest. Those are his exact words, later adapted to survival of the fittest. But in his book, it was survival of the strongest. The best science of the modern world now tells us that the fundamental rule of nature is cooperation. And as you said, mutual aid is what biologists call it. It doesn't deny that competition happens. We all see it, of course. We're not going to deny that. But what it tells us is that the more competition and the more struggle that we see, that tells us how far we've strayed from this fundamental principle. So the reason this is important, this whole conversation is about the new story. It's about a new human story based upon a universe that is alive and conscious and intelligent, and us who have origins that are so mysterious with such extraordinary potentials, we're only beginning to understand how to unleash them in the world. This is where it comes right down to right now in the time of COVID, when so many people are struggling so much and they have lost so much. In the world that we were led to believe that we live in, if we lived in a world of competition, if we lived in a dead universe where we are the product of random mutations and lucky biology, in that world, it would make sense to do what we have done for so long. And that is when we make a choice of a job or a career or a relationship or a partnership, we always say, what's in it for me? What can I get for myself? So in a dead universe of random mutations, that makes perfect sense. But now, the new story, the science is telling us we are in a living universe, conscious and intelligent, and that we are that conscious intelligence as well, based in cooperation. So the question now shifts from what can I get from the world that exists to what can I give? What can I contribute? What can I offer? What can I share? So just a quick story. A really good friend of mine in the financial crisis, the banking crisis in 2008, was a builder, a contractor, and he lost everything in that crisis. He lost his job. He couldn't provide for his family. He had people depending on him, a whole crew of builders. He lost all of that. And he struggled for a while. And one night, he said, and in his own words, he bolted up from a deep sleep about 3 o'clock in the morning. And he was saying the words, what do people need? What do people need? And what he realized is people need to be able to care for themselves and feed themselves. He woke up the next morning and he began to design and build and prototype not the homes that he had done in the past, but modular, raised bed, self-watering, self-heating greenhouses so that people, and they could be scaled from 1 foot square on the windowsill of a high-rise apartment to 8 feet by 3 feet, which we have actually in multiples. We have 3 of them. He began to build these, and I have to tell you, by asking the question, what can I give or what can I share? He took his skill set and he applied it to the moment of what people need in that moment. He has a business that is thriving much more than his construction business with homes. He's happier. He can't wait to get up in the morning. He gets to meet new people as he installs these things all over the country. And now he has kits that go all over the world. And all he did was change the question from what can I get to what can I give? What can I share? What can I offer? And I think that is a pivotal question in our time of extremes, in the time of COVID, as we are reduced to just the nuts and bolts of what's important in our lives. That fundamental question, Len, it changes everything. The way we answer it changes everything. And I think we owe it to ourselves to ask that question. I ask myself that question at least once every single day, because I have so many opportunities that cross my path. And they're all good, but which ones help me to contribute to my community, to my nation that I love, to my planet that I love? And the answer to that question is what drives my yes and my no. So my saying yes to you today, this invitation, this very kind invitation, I ask myself that question, and you are a big, big yes every time. And I know we're coming to the close of our program today, but so I just want to thank you again for your trust and for the opportunity to just to share a part of our day together, Len, and to be with our community in the way that we are right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Greg. Well, look, let's take some questions from the people who are on this. But thank you for all of that. Let's start with the questions. Put my glasses on for this. Let's see.
I love those glasses. I've never seen the blue ones, and I really love those.
I got lots of different colored reading glasses.
You're like the Elton John of the spiritual community.
Absolutely. Let's see. Okay. I have lived my life, says Kate, for my husband, children, and work for many years. I'm very drawn to community sufficiency. I really hear you about the need for a life vision and strategy, but I need help to walk me through how to figure out what that vision, my life meaning, and the strategy that supports that. Are there resources out there that you can recommend? Kate, why don't I take this? First of all, some of the things that I teach are all about what a guy called Dr. John Diamond called the homing thought, which is the purpose that you have been put on this earth to do. I feel that everybody has one of those. Now, it doesn't have to be anything grand. When we're talked about community self-sufficiency and life vision, it doesn't have to be being president of the United States. It doesn't have to be, doing anything major out there in the world. It can be about making the perfect chocolate cake. If you have lived your life for your husband, children, and your community, you are contributing. You are contributing hugely. And, what I think we're talking about is something beyond the self. And I think, I speak as a mother and a wife, you do for other people every day of your life. You know, you make a sacrifice, you do a giving every single day as a mother, as a wife. And that can be a life vision. As those children grow, then your move beyond the family to the community can grow too. And I think that is something that I certainly see. One of the things that I keep recommending for people now in this time of lockdown is creating a Power of Eight group, because having this group of people to connect with, to interact with, to heal, to help is so incredibly strengthening. I have one with a group of, it's a group of thought leaders, and we meet every Monday. And we started out meeting because one of the members had stage 4 cancer. He's just about healed now, by the way. It's been about 8 or 9 months. But now we actually call the group, facetiously, we call it Who's Got What? Because it's because people come every week with, you know, my husband fell off a chair and he's cracked 2 ribs, or, you know, I've just been diagnosed with cancer, or I lost my wife, or whatever. And it becomes a situation where you're giving every week. And that becomes strengthening. It becomes a method of connection. And it's just, and particularly in this time of isolation, and it finally becomes, you know, your intention family, your community. So I just want to let people know, you can take a course with me. I'm running mine in February, the Power of Eight Master Class, and you can find it on my website, lynnmctaggart.com. You can also, if you can't take a course with me and it's a year-long course, you can just connect on my Facebook page, Connecting and Healing Through the Power of Eight. You just put up a little notice there saying, you know, hey, I want a group in this time zone. And they'll answer. We've got thousands of people on that, or my new community site that's going live too on lynnmctaggart.com. So there are many ways to do that. So let's take another question. Let's get something for Greg. So someone says, this is Justin. I'm just completing my specialization in geology. Perfect. University of Alberta, with a focus on hydrologic modeling and contaminant hydrogeology. In your opinion, Greg, what areas of research need more attention so we can move forward in this new and exciting time?
Yeah, well, first of all, what is his name again?
It's Justin.
Justin, thank you for your question. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I think what we're finding, we are, as scientists, we are conditioned to compartmentalize the world that we live in to make it easy to study. So we're conditioned to think in terms of geology and chemistry and biology and, you know, genetics and things like that. And that can be useful. But where the application comes in is when we begin to cross those traditional boundaries. Because the truth is, nature and the world we live in don't know about those boundaries. So I think the application of the water sciences or the atmospheric sciences, where those really reflect the need of the world that we see today, is when we begin to cross the traditional boundaries that have separated them from the other sciences. I'm just going to give you an example. When I was 1970s, I was working in the industry as a geologist. Actually, it was the early years of what was called computer geology. And one of the first things that I found was that the magnetic fields of our planet were in decline. They were falling they still are. They're falling rapidly. And my question as a geologist is, what does that mean to us? You know, living beings. What does a declining magnetic field of the planet mean for us? And so I asked my geologist friends, and they all had these little blinders on. They would say, don't ask me, you know, I'm a geologist, go ask a biologist. And so I would ask my biology friends, and they'd say, you know, I don't know. I know about cells. I don't know about magnetic fields. Go ask a physicist. And of course, this is changing now, but it's a beautiful example of where you can be an expert in one field, but have difficulty finding application and in a meaningful way in the real world. So I think where the next great frontier is being able to cross those traditional boundaries in your case, in the water sciences. What does that mean to the other sciences and other aspects of life and what's happening in our time of extremes right now? And I got to tell you, you're in a great place, because water is becoming a scarce, good, clean water is becoming a scarce commodity. It's going to be one of the great commodities of the 21st century. So I want to thank you for the work you're doing. And I could go on from there, but I'll stop. I know we want to take as many questions as we can. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg. That's so good. Okay.
Lynn, I want to go back to the first question, because
Sure.
it's a really important question. And, I have to tell you, I'll just, on a very personal level, many people know I am the product of a very dysfunctional, alcoholic family. I'm a survivor of childhood trauma. And so a lot of these issues have come up for me in my life, and I've had to figure them out. One of the things that I found, and I'm thinking about the question that the woman asked, early in my life, I went through and I could check all the little boxes for the things that were expected of me in terms of being a husband and being an employee in the corporation and a good son. All those things, all the boxes were ticked off, but there was something missing inside of me. And that may be what's happening with her. She's doing all the things that are expected. But where the shift really happened for me was when I asked myself, what is it that brings joy into my life? What is it? Where does my soul really sing? Where does the juice come inside of me? And once I began to understand and answer honestly for myself that question, in addition to all the things, all the boxes that I had ticked off, that was the missing piece for me. And when we want to find that deep fulfillment, give meaning to our lives, give us a reason to wake up every morning, I think it comes, and it's different for everyone, but we all have skills and talents that are inherent in our individual being. And those are the unique skills and talents that the world is calling forth right now. So the world wants not necessarily what we have a degree in or what our training is in, excuse me, or what we've done in the past. The universe is saying, what do you have to contribute to this world that no one else can do quite the way that you can do? Once you begin to awaken that potential, for me, that's what brings that deep meaning to life. So I just wanted to say that it was kind of like right there. I just wanted to say it as we go on.
No, that's a great addition. Thank you, Greg. And it's very interesting. As I mentioned, John Diamond, he invented essentially behavioral kinesiology, muscle testing, but with thoughts. And he found that the one thing that keeps your arms strong when somebody says a toxic thought to you, like that neighbor you can't stand is at the front door, or your mother didn't love you, or your tire is flat, he'll find the one thing that keeps that arm strong is the thought of what you were put on this earth to do. Mm-hmm. And that I have found, as you say, Greg, sometimes that's discovering, sometimes it's a journey of discovery to find that meaning. But I find over and over again that meaning in helping, in giving, is the juice. It's the secret sauce. That altruism is over and over again what gives life the greatest meaning. So I really encourage people to look at that. A few more questions. Somebody asked about, I'm told my heart condition, atrial fibrillation, is not curable and that I need to surrender every organ in the body. to heal itself. I've been approached by this from all levels. I'd like to show the doctors something else is possible. Well, I'm going to put on my What Doctors Don't Tell You hat for a second and say atrial fibrillation, AFib, is very curable. We have a book called What Doctors Don't Tell You About the Heart, easy to get on Amazon, and has a whole list of things to do with diet and supplements to heal AFib. So that is only a conventional view, but most integrative doctors find that it is, it is easily curable. I just wanted to throw that one in because we had that question. We have another question.
Well, Lynn, I just have to, I'm going to chime in here because what the doctors won't tell you is part of the good news that we began this broadcast with. One of those factors is that every organ, every gland, and all tissues in the human body are now documented with the ability to stop the disease, to repair the damage, and to reverse the damage that has been done to them. Even the organs and tissues we were told could not, including heart tissue, brain tissue, spinal cord tissue, pancreatic tissue. The key is they must be given the environment that supports that healing. The environment can be an external environment. It can be a nutritional environment. Those are important. But what the studies are showing is, and Lynn's already said this, the most powerful environment is the inner environment that's created through thoughts, feelings, emotions, and beliefs. And this is where the discovery, in 1991, scientists discovered 40,000 specialized cells, sensory neurites in the heart that form a neural network. It was published in 94 in the journal Neurocardiology. And interestingly, this neural network, it is concentrated around the places in the heart that impact precisely what you're talking about right now. It's the nerves are focused around the valves and the arteries for the intake, the output, and the fluctuations in the way blood is moving in the body. And because they are based in nerves, our perceptions, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and beliefs, conscious and subconscious, are actually regulating. We have the ability to self-regulate what it is that you're talking about. So it's not part of the medical model yet, and that's changing, but it is part of the new peer-reviewed science. This isn't Greg's theory or airy-fairy, wish. This is rock solid science that simply is not being shared in the mainstream. So I'm going to invite you to check out, if you haven't, the Institute of HeartMath. Obviously, both Lynn and I talk about them a lot. HeartMath.org for techniques that help to, or any of my programs I talk about all the time, or any of my courses. And it's online. You can go to my YouTube videos. I've got a whole YouTube channel. You can see the techniques out there. But I don't want you to be discouraged. I want you to be encouraged and to feel empowered, because you are the master of this soft, powerful inner technology. So thank you, Lynn.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you for mentioning HeartMath, which is run by two dear friends of ours, including Howard Martin. A final comment. Several have asked, can you share your top 3 energetic or diet supplement suggestions to help protect ourselves from COVID? So again, I'm going to put on my What Doctors Don't Tell You Get Well hat, and you could check out getwell.solutions, one of our organizations that has run 4 free seminars, and you can just have a look at them about how to protect yourself from COVID. And we're running a couple on boosting your immune system. So check out getwell.solutions or join my community and we'll tell you about it. But here's the top 4. Number 1, a very low carb diet. So what I mean is really a paleo or keto diet. So you get rid of all the white stuff, white rice, white potatoes, processed foods, sugar, all that stuff. And healthy foods, whether vegetarian, plant-based diet, or with some animal protein. high doses of vitamin C, at least 5,000 or 5 grams a day or more, at least 5,000 IUs of vitamin D, a few drops of Lugol's iodine a day, or put in a salt pipe that you inhale, and some zinc. And those are your most powerful protectors against COVID. Iodine, iodine is contact kills any virus or bacteria. So these are what our doctors, both in America and in the UK, have found are very helpful in protecting against COVID. So I wanted to throw that in, but in keeping with our conversation, hope, positivity, optimism, a true purpose in life, giving, sharing, altruism. These are all giant immune system strengtheners. And as we talked about before, even when you have an illness, a spiritual, emotional, mental point of view is probably your best medicine.
Yeah.
So
Lynn, I just want to add to that, the reduction of stress is one of the most powerful nutrients. And the irony is that we are all being taxed and stressed. Our immune systems and our emotions are being taxed and stressed through the lockdowns to a degree that we've rarely seen in our, in our lifetimes. Some of the stress is obvious through relationships, and if you're in traffic, a lot of the stress is unrecognized. It's from eating toxic foods or drinking water that has a lot of impurities. Your body has to work to balance those out, and that's a form of stress. So in the interest of time, all I'm going to say is, if you can check out any of my YouTube videos on heart-brain coherence, or the Institute of Heart Math and their techniques of creating heart-brain coherence, because one of the powerful benefits of heart-brain coherence is the reduction of stress on an emotional as well as a physiological level in the body. I use these techniques at least once a day in my life. I have since Heart Math's inception 26 years ago. So this stuff works, and that's why I'm saying it right now.
Fantastic, Greg.
Yeah.
Tell us, do you have anything upcoming? Let everybody know what they can look forward to and where.
COVID has changed our world. I'm going to invite people to go to my website, gregbraden.com. We are offering the courses on radical resilience periodically, so watch for the next offering. We've got some new courses coming up, and as the world opens and we begin our events again, we have multi-day retreats and workshops where we go into tremendous depth of experience in developing these techniques of resilience in the body across all of the domains, all 5 of the domains of resilience.
Thank you, Greg. And please do check him out, gregbraden.com. Amazing speaker, visionary, and dear friend. And for me, check out lynnmctaggart.com, my new masterclass, Power of 8 Intention Masterclass. If you want to learn all about how to use intention in your life, have a group who is going to become your intention family, find out how to read other people's intention, use it with your relationships, protect yourself from negativity, and much, much more. Check out under courses, check out Power of 8 Intention Masterclass. And we also have, I think, the URL in the chat here. So thank you so much, Greg. It's always so fabulous to talk with you. It's so lovely to talk to everybody who's been listening. Thank you so much. Thank you for your questions. And most of all, stay positive. It might be a little bit bumpy, but this is going to be a really good ride.
It's a good year. All right. Love you all. Lynn, give my love to your family, and a big immune boosting hug from me to you through these photons on the computer screen. And I look forward to our next. Thank you for inviting me here today. I appreciate it.
Me too. Thank you so much, Greg. Bye, everybody.